Hey guys, what's up? It's Josh here, back with another Kansas City Chiefs related video. And today I wanted to talk about a player that I would like to see the Kansas City Chiefs add following roster cut down day across the NFL as all the teams met the 53-man roster deadline. We saw some players get let go from other teams. And there was one player that caught my eye that got cut yesterday that I think the Chiefs should take a close look at. And that is John Brown, most recently of the Las Vegas Raiders. John Brown came over to the Las Vegas Raiders as a free agent this offseason after being with the Buffalo Bills the past two seasons. He signed a 1-year, $3.5 million contract this offseason, but he ended up getting released, and it's not for reasons that you would think, like he got passed up by other players on the depth chart and whatnot. It's because he wanted out. He requested a release. Now, I don't know why specifically he requested a release, but, sometimes players just don't see a fit for themselves in a certain situation, and maybe in this case, John Brown just didn't want to be a Raider, which I don't blame him, but now he's available, and I think he's someone that the Chiefs should take a look at, and I have seen it mentioned on Twitter too that an interesting aspect is if the Chiefs were to sign John Brown, that motivation factor, being able to go back up against the Raiders, would be pretty intriguing. But let's walk it back a little bit. Why would I want the Chiefs to sign John Brown? Well, following cut down day, there weren't a lot of surprises on the Chiefs. There were a couple, but the receiver room is pretty much, I think, what we expected. So they kept Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman, Demarcus Robinson, Byron Pringle, Daurice Fountain, and then Marcus Kemp was back on the active roster. He got released at first, but got brought back because the Chiefs wanted to keep him around. He's one of those guys that even if the Chiefs cut him, he's not going anywhere else. He's always going to be there for the Chiefs to sign. So that's kind of your receiver group. And I'm happy to see Daurice Fountain make it. And I know a lot of fans are excited for the upside of a lot of receivers on the Chiefs. However, we've talked about it all offseason long. If you just take Tyreek Hill out of that group, or if Tyreek Hill isn't in the game for a percentage of the snaps, who's going to step up? Like, who from that group is going to separate themselves from the pack and be a bona fide number two? And maybe the Chiefs don't have a bona fide number two this season, and they just roll with what they have, which is probably actually what I expect them to do, but I would like them to show interest in John Brown. But anyway, back to what I was saying. Who is going to step up from that group? Because, again, I'm not saying these guys are bad receivers, and Chiefs fans, there's reason to be excited about the upside of guys like Daurice Fountain and all that. Oh, also, I forgot to mention Cornell Powell, who latched back onto the practice squad. Maybe you see some of him next season, whatever. But I think a lot of us would feel a lot more comfortable adding a veteran to this group who just gives you some proven production. Because it is totally possible that most of these guys that made the roster don't take that step forward that we want to see them take, and it's just a middling group of receivers. And I don't want that for Patrick Mahomes and this rejuvenated offensive line with a Patrick Mahomes that, is looking to get revenge this season coming off a Super Bowl loss. He's the best quarterback in the game. He deserves good receivers. And again, I want to clarify, I'm not saying these receivers are bad, but there is a possibility that they just kind of plateau and they're not really overwhelmingly good, and they are just a middling group of receivers, as I said. So what you really want is proven production, and they don't have a lot of proven production right now. I know the Chiefs would ideally want to add someone who fits that X receiver role and steps in for Sammy Watkins, and I've seen it get talked about a lot, and I agree. Sometimes we kind of overstate the impact Watkins had on the Chiefs, because if you look at his production, it really wasn't all that great. Didn't play a lot of games, but people act like finding his replacement is this big thing that the Chiefs have to do. But we do have to acknowledge that Sammy Watkins, when he was healthy, when he was on the field, he made the Chiefs' offense better. There was a different feel to the offense. The offense was more efficient when he was out there. And even though Sammy was frustrating with his injury and he didn't have a whole lot of production, when he was on the field, He drew attention from defenses. He was a reliable receiver, not durable, but reliable. And he definitely gave you someone who was a talented, bona fide number 2 receiver. And the Chiefs don't currently have that. I'm not saying John Brown is going to be this bona fide number 2. He's definitely on the wrong side of 30. I think his best is probably behind him. However, he's only 2 seasons removed from being a 1,000-yard receiver. In 2019, he had 1,000 yards receiving for the Buffalo Bills. Then the Buffalo Bills, of course, brought in Cole Beasley and Stephon Diggs to that receiver group. And as a result, John Brown's production went down a little bit, but he was still serviceable in 2020 for the Bills. Over 450 yards and 3 touchdowns. I would feel a lot better about adding a player like that to this receiver room. And we all know that injuries can hit at any time. And let's just say Mecole Hardman goes down. John Brown definitely kind of fits that Mecole Hardman mold, but he's more polished than Mecole Hardman, in my opinion. And he can definitely, like I said, give you that proven production because, again, there's a possibility that Mecole Hardman doesn't take that step we all want him to take, and he's a disappointment. Well, then the Chiefs are going to need someone that kind of softens the blow of Mecole Hardman not developing, and John Brown could certainly do that, right? John Brown doesn't solve all the problems at receiver. He would likely be a stopgap until the Chiefs address wide receiver next offseason, whether it be through the draft or free agency. But John Brown is certainly a solid veteran. Expecting any of the guys on the Chiefs roster to explode into a bona fide number 2 receiver with sufficient stats, I think at this point is kind of a large leap of faith. So again, not saying those players are bad, but I question whether any of them can step into that number 2 role. I think John Brown is closer to being that number 2 type of receiver than any of those guys at this moment. I think Brett Veach and the Chiefs are somewhat aware of this too because let's remember, this team went hard after Juju Smith-Schuster. They checked in on a couple other names. So it's not like after they missed on Juju and those other guys, they just threw up their hands and went, well, I guess we just have to be happy with what we have at receiver. Now, maybe since then they've come to the realization, maybe some guys have impressed them and they don't feel, as urgent of a need to go out and get a receiver. But I think the general consensus in that room is, hey, we're going to kind of have to address receiver given what we have at this point. And we even saw in preseason, too, there was some shaky play from the receivers, and clearly Mecole and Mahomes are still not on the same page. There was a lot of confusion in that Arizona Cardinals preseason game. There was a lot of just miscues from Mahomes and Hardman. You saw Kelsey still yelling at Hardman saying, man, what are you doing? So, John Brown would really just be a nice cushion for this receiver group. I don't know how many times I gotta say it. But you definitely want to maximize the potential of this offense, given that Patrick Mahomes, like I said, is rejuvenated. The offensive line looks amazing. So you want to make this offense truly one of the best we've ever seen in Chiefs history and give Pat Mahomes the best group of receivers possible. And I think John Brown could certainly fit the bill of what the Chiefs are looking for. He's a talented guy. He's fast too. He fits that speed theme that the Chiefs like in the receivers. He is on the wrong side of 30, maybe not as fast, not a spring chicken anymore. But definitely a player that has some speed, has some juice to him, and can go out and get you 500 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns next year. I think we would all be happy with that. So, all that being said, I want to hear from you guys. Do you think the Chiefs adding John Brown would be a good idea? Are you interested at all in that? Did you agree, disagree with anything I said? But yeah. Just let me know in the comments. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe so more Chiefs can find this video. And make sure you check out my work on kckingdom.com and showmefootball.com. Peace.